Have you ever looked at someone speaking fluent English and thought, if only I had started earlier? Maybe you're watching this late at night, feeling a quiet sadness you can't explain. Not because you're lazy, not because you're weak, but because part of you believes it's too late, that your time has passed, that you missed the chance to become who you wanted to be, and yet here you are, still searching, still listening, still hoping. What if I told you you're not behind? You're not too old, you're not late, you're just finally beginning with clarity. You've lived through heartbreaks, deadlines, raising children, losing jobs, surviving disappointments no one clapped for. And now, for the first time, you're learning for you. Not for school, not for approval, but to reclaim your voice. In this video, you won't just learn English. You'll learn how to rebuild yourself through language, through story, through slow, imperfect, powerful sentences that carry the weight of your life. Because learning English at 40, 50, or 60 isn't a disadvantage. It's a revolution. And once you realize that, something irreversible begins inside you. There's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when a person looks at their reflection and whispers, "Maybe I'm not too late. Maybe I'm finally ready." It doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with understanding. At 40, 50, or 60, you don't start from zero. You start from everything you've lived through, every heartbreak, every loss, every lesson. They weren't delays. They were preparations. And when someone finally begins learning English at this stage, they're not chasing a dream. They're reclaiming their voice. For years, she carried silent beliefs. My brain is too old. It's too late now. Learning was easier when I was young. These thoughts weren't facts. They were echoes of society. Someone told her once that adults struggle more with languages, and she believed it. But the truth, science says otherwise. The brain doesn't give up at 40. It just asks for meaning, and that changes everything. Instead of memorizing random words, she began attaching them to her life. The word hope reminded her of nights she prayed for peace. The phrase start over made her think of the time she packed her bags and moved cities alone. This is mature memory. It's not about repetition, it's about resonance. Older learners might forget what's meaningless, but they remember what's meaningful. That's a superpower, not a weakness. There's a strange kind of freedom that comes with age. The freedom of not needing to impress anyone anymore. In a classroom full of younger students, she didn't feel the pressure to be the best. She just wanted to be real, to speak, to express herself, even if her sentence was broken. I go yesterday, park. She said it, blushed, then smiled. Nobody clapped. But inside, she felt like she had won a war. When you're young, you learn because someone tells you to. A teacher, a parent, society. But when you're older, you learn because you finally realized how much your voice matters. She didn't begin late. She began with clarity, with emotional fuel, with the understanding that every word she learns now is a key, not to a classroom, but to a different life. A job she never applied for because she was afraid. A trip she always postponed. A conversation she wanted to have but never could. One morning, while washing dishes, a thought hit her. I wasn't late. I was just collecting pieces of myself. That sentence changed everything. She looked at English not as a foreign language, but as a mirror. The person she was before wasn't ready for this. But now she had context. Now she had stories. Now she had something powerful, a reason. Try this. Take one English word today. Any word. Courage, change, journey. Now ask yourself, what part of my life does this word belong to? Write a sentence. Speak it out loud. That's how older learners grow, not by drilling, but by connecting. Because English isn't just vocabulary, it's the emotion behind it. And the more you link your story to the language, the more unforgettable it becomes. So no, she wasn't late, and neither are you. Maybe the world made you believe you missed the train, but here's the truth. You were never waiting for the train. The train was waiting for you to be ready. And as soon as she realized that, something else became clear. There's a reason so many people fear starting after 40. But that fear, it's not about age. It's about a story we were sold a long time ago. If you really want to feel old, there's a trick. Just compare your beginning to someone else's middle. That's all it takes. One glance at a younger person speaking fluently, and suddenly your confidence disappears. But here's the truth no one told you. Comparison is not truth. It's a distortion. That 22-year-old on YouTube didn't start last week. They started years ago, when their only responsibility was passing a test, not raising a family or surviving heartbreak. When you compare your journey to theirs, you're not being fair to yourself. You're measuring a tree by its shadow, not its roots. There was a lie you were probably told. The brain stops learning after a certain age. It sounds scientific, but it's outdated and dangerous. Neuroplasticity doesn't shut off. It evolves. Young brains absorb fast, but older brains absorb deeply. You don't just memorize, you make meaning. That's why one English word can hit harder at 45 than at 15. Freedom, regret, hope. They don't just live in your vocabulary. They live in your memory, in your emotions, in your past. That's not a disadvantage, that's emotional fluency. But if you want to stay stuck, there's another trick. Look only for stories that confirm your fears. Google "older people struggle to learn English." You'll find plenty of confirmation, but that's not truth. That's confirmation bias. The brain finds what it's trained to search for. So shift the question. Every day, look for one success story, someone your age or older who did it anyway. Print it, screenshot it, repeat it. Make those stories your mental playlist. It's not fake motivation, it's mental training. Here's a fact most people forget. Adults are pattern recognition machines. It's how we survive, how we parent, how we lead. And pattern recognition is the backbone of language. Think about it. English is full of rhythms, formulas, and structures. I'm about to. What if I. These are not just phrases. They are mental templates. And adults catch them faster because they've lived them. You know when something sounds wrong, even if you can't explain why. That's linguistic intuition, a gift that grows with age. Try this. Pick one English expression this week, just one, like "I should have known." Then use it in a sentence connected to your life. I should have known he wasn't coming. I should have known I needed more time. Feel the emotion inside the phrase. That's when English stops being a subject and becomes a part of your voice. Young learners might memorize better, but older learners mean it more, and meaning sticks. The real reason age feels like a problem isn't biology, it's narrative. Someone sold you a story that made you feel expired. Maybe it was a teacher, a family member, or society itself whispering, "It's too late now." And you bought it. Not because it was true, but because it was repeated. That story became your prison. But guess what? Stories can be rewritten. And the first chapter begins when you say, "What if that was never true?" Imagine this. Instead of saying, "I'm too old to learn English," you say, "I'm finally learning with purpose." One sentence, one mental shift. Suddenly, you stop feeling behind and start feeling powerful, because power doesn't come from youth, it comes from ownership. And when you own your learning journey, age becomes a companion, not a curse. So no, age isn't your enemy. The real enemy, the unchallenged stories you carry. And when she realized that, something in her began to shift. She thought back to someone sitting quietly in the back of a classroom, someone older, someone overlooked, someone who had everything to lose, but everything to gain. She sat at the back of the classroom, hands trembling, not from age, but from fear. Around her, students laughed, whispered, typed fast messages on their phones, but she was frozen. One sentence. That's all the teacher asked. "Introduce yourself in English," and her mouth went dry. Her heart wasn't racing because of grammar. It was racing because she didn't want to fail. Not again. She wasn't there for a hobby. She was there because her life was demanding change, and this language was the doorway. At 57, she knew what most of the others didn't. She knew how hard it was to start over when life had already burned through chapters. She wasn't there for a certificate. She was there because her husband had passed, her children had moved abroad, her career had ended too soon, and now, for the first time in years, she was alone with her own reflection. English wasn't just a class, it was a lifeline. Her hands shook because this wasn't about words, it was about not disappearing. She looked around and noticed something strange. The younger ones had more energy, yes, but they weren't fully there. They joked, they checked Instagram, they skipped homework. But she hung on to every word. She repeated phrases under her breath. She wrote down full sentences and practiced after midnight, because for her, this was survival. And in that silence, she realized her advantage. She had urgency. She wasn't learning to impress, she was learning to live. Every evening after class, she'd walk home and whisper to herself in English, "I am learning. My name is Julia." Her voice shaky, her accent thick, but her determination unshakable. She started writing her own memory sentences. "I remember the first time I felt brave. I remember losing everything and choosing not to quit." That's how she learned. Through story, through emotion, through pain, not through perfect grammar. One night, sitting at her kitchen table, she asked herself a question. Why am I doing this? And the answer made her cry. Because I need a new life. That became her study mantra. Every new word had a purpose. Apply, interview, confidence, freedom. This wasn't education, it was architecture. She was building an exit door, out of grief, out of isolation, out of who she used to be. A month later it happened. In the middle of class, without warning, she raised her hand and said a full sentence in English, not perfect, not fast, but hers. "I want to work again and speak with people." The room went quiet. Even the teacher paused. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. And more importantly, she saw herself. That's the moment many learners never talk about, the moment when English stops being a language and becomes a lifeline. It's not about fluency, it's about identity. Julia wasn't just learning English. She was remembering who she could still become, and that changes everything. That kind of transformation doesn't need applause, it needs courage. And just when she thought it was only about her, she began to wonder, how many others are sitting quietly in the back of life, waiting for permission to begin again? She didn't know it yet, but her story wasn't rare. It was just rarely told. And what she felt, that fear of beginning again, it had a name. But it wasn't age. It was something much deeper. Most people think they fear being too old. But if you look closer, the real fear isn't age. It's exposure. It's being seen at the starting line when you feel like you should already be far ahead. It's that whisper, "They're going to think I'm slow." That's shame? It's not from English class. It's from life, from years of hiding mistakes, from being told over and over that adults should have it all figured out. So when you speak slowly, when you hesitate, it doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It feels humiliating. But here's what most people never question. Where does that shame really come from? Often it begins in childhood. A teacher laughs when you mispronounce a word. A classmate finishes faster and you feel behind. That moment gets stored, not in memory but in identity. So now at 45 or 60, when you forget a word in English, your body reacts like it's in danger. But you're not in danger. You're just healing from something that started decades ago. And healing takes gentleness, not judgment. There's a strange illusion that adults fall into. We compare our English mistakes to younger learners, forgetting they have no jobs, no bills, no children to feed. Of course they move faster. They're sprinting on a clean path. But you're climbing a mountain with a backpack full of responsibility, experience, and pain. The question isn't, why am I slower? The real question is, how am I still moving with all I've carried? That's not weakness. That's a miracle. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is this. Stop measuring your fluency in speed. Start measuring it in courage. Speaking slowly doesn't mean you're behind. It means you're brave enough to show up anyway. In fact, slow speech is one of the best tools for clarity. When you slow down, you notice the words, you feel the rhythm. You give your brain space to catch up. Want to try? Choose a short sentence and say it slowly, intentionally. I am still learning, and that's okay. If shame still rises when you speak, try this exercise. Talk to yourself for 60 seconds a day. Not to impress, just to practice being safe inside your own voice. Talk about your breakfast, your feelings, your dreams. The goal isn't fluency, it's desensitization. The more your brain sees that nothing bad happens when you speak, the more relaxed you become. That's how healing begins. Not with confidence, but with exposure that doesn't hurt. You might think, but I sound terrible. And maybe you do for now, but so what? Who told you your worth depended on sounding perfect? Your accent is not a mistake. Your pauses are not proof of failure. They are evidence of beginning, and beginning is sacred. Every time you say one imperfect sentence, you're not failing. You're dismantling years of silent self-judgment, slowly, powerfully, without applause but with purpose. Now track your time, not your talent. Ask yourself, how many minutes did I give to English this week? That's your real scoreboard. And if you spoke 5 sentences alone in your room today, you've already done more than most. Consistency is your new success. And with every phrase, you rewrite the story that said, I'm too late. No, you were just never taught how to begin again without shame. And as she recorded her voice one night, shaky, raw, unfiltered, she didn't delete it. She kept it, listened to it, not to judge, but to witness her own growth, because something deep inside was shifting. It wasn't her age, it was her identity. And once that shift begins, you no longer need permission to learn. You begin to feel something strange, something most people don't associate with getting older. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. There's a deep, quiet power that comes with age. You stop waiting for someone to tell you what you're allowed to do. At 50, no teacher, no textbook, no system can define your limits anymore. That's the beauty of learning English later in life. You're not chasing a grade, you're reclaiming autonomy. She realized this the day she stopped asking, "Can I do this?" and started declaring, "This is mine." She wasn't trying to earn permission. She was giving it to herself. She sat down with a notebook and wrote her own learning rules. No more grammar guilt. No more comparing herself to people who had nothing to lose. Her rule number 1, my progress is mine. Rule number 2, I can speak slowly and still be powerful. Rule number 3, mistakes are not evidence of failure. They are evidence of effort. And just like that, the cage of invisible expectations began to dissolve. For years, society handed her a silent script. You're supposed to decline now. Don't take risks. Play it safe. But she burned that script. Because the truth is, reinvention is not a rebellion. It's a return. A return to who you were before fear became your narrator. So she did something small, yet bold. She joined an online English group where everyone was 20 years younger. And she didn't apologize once. That's what freedom looks like. She started choosing her pain, not avoiding it, and that changed everything. Practicing English daily was hard, but it was chosen pain. It had meaning, unlike the pain of regret or the ache of what if. One day she challenged herself, read 1 page out loud every morning. Her voice cracked, her tongue stumbled, but she smiled after every sentence. That pain, it was growth in disguise. The real joy came not from results, but from reclaiming effort. She wasn't waiting for praise. She was enjoying the process of becoming. One evening, she recorded herself saying something she'd never dared to say. I am not too old. I am still expanding. She didn't share the video. She didn't need to, because the person she needed to convince was finally listening, herself. English wasn't just a language anymore. It was a mirror. It showed her that she didn't need to shrink to be accepted. She could stretch, expand, explore. She could forget a word mid-sentence and still keep talking. Why? Because fluency is not perfection. Fluency is movement, and now she was in motion again. If you ever feel stuck, try this. Do one English activity that nobody expects from you. Watch a documentary without subtitles, join a live chat, sing out loud to an English song. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. Every unexpected action rewires your story. It tells your brain, I am not done, I am rewriting the rules. And when she wrote the sentence, I am someone who learns at any age in her journal, it didn't feel like a motivational quote. It felt like the truth, a truth she didn't need to prove to anyone. And the more she lived that truth, the more she understood. What makes older learners powerful is not speed, it's strategy. When you begin learning English after 40, something strange happens. It's not just about the words anymore, it becomes symbolic. Every verb, every sentence feels like you're rewriting your own past. It's not just, I am learning English. It's, I am allowed to change. Youth learns for school, for exams, for approval. But you learn for rebirth, for the version of yourself that life delayed but never deleted. That's why English becomes more than grammar. It becomes your second chance. One night, she looked at a list of vocabulary. Restart, dream, belong, freedom. And suddenly, it wasn't about definitions. It was about decisions. These words described what she had hidden for decades, what she had postponed while taking care of others. Now, every new word became an act of self-recovery. Try this. Pick one of your own dreams, the one you've buried. Now translate it into English. Not perfectly, just enough to feel it again. That's how you create an emotional bridge to the future. Older brains don't memorize faster, they memorize deeper. Science shows that emotional memory is stronger than mechanical repetition. When she learned the word regret, she didn't need a dictionary. She had lived it. When she practiced grief, her body remembered. This is why mature learners, despite the struggle, create longer-lasting fluency, because their language is built on meaning, not just memory. If you want to remember a word forever, connect it to a real emotion or story. Of course, fear still shows up. In fact, it grows louder with age. What if I fail? What if I sound ridiculous? But here's the paradox. Fear increases, and so does courage. Because when you're older, you know what it feels like to stay stuck. You've seen the cost of silence. That's why speaking one broken sentence out loud can feel braver than climbing a mountain. Want to take that risk today? Say something in English that scares you, not to impress, just to liberate. Learning a new language at this age forces your identity to stretch. She was no longer the woman who avoided airports, interviews, or phone calls. She was slowly becoming someone else, someone who chooses discomfort over regret. One day, she looked in the mirror and whispered, "This is not just language. This is healing. And healing is messy, slow, non-linear, but worth it." Some days were frustrating. She'd forget words, feel tired, wonder why she even started. But the truth always returned. English was never just a skill. It was a metaphor, a reminder that transformation is possible, even after the world says it's too late. And each time she pronounced a new word, it was like taking back time, not going backward, but forward, with intention. There's a quiet practice you can try. Record one short message to your younger self in English, just 20 seconds. Say what you wish someone had told you back then. Maybe, "You're allowed to try again," or "You don't have to be perfect to begin." That voice? That's not grammar practice. That's self-repair. That's language as therapy. And the deeper she went, the more she realized this wasn't just about English anymore. It was about dignity, about rewriting a timeline that once felt frozen. And as she picked up her notebook, her pen trembling slightly, she smiled. Not because she had mastered the language, but because she had just mastered something rarer, the art of beginning again with purpose. And it's in that purpose where the mature learner finds a secret edge. If you stand outside the classroom and watch closely, you'll see something surprising. The youngest students often move fast, but their minds are scattered, notifications, distractions, multitasking. But the older learners, they don't rush, they focus. That's their quiet weapon. While others skim through lessons, she sits with one sentence and digs deep. 10 minutes of focused study at 55 is more powerful than an hour of distracted scrolling at 20. This isn't slowness, this is strategy. She began setting a timer. Just 10 minutes a day, no multitasking, no background noise, just English and her. One paragraph, one video, one podcast. She shadowed native speakers with slow, intentional repetition. I'm here, I'm learning, I'm becoming. That became her daily practice, and over time, that simple discipline created something stronger than motivation, momentum. Small, consistent effort. That's the superpower of the mature learner. With age comes another silent advantage, stability. She didn't need to force routines. She was already living them. Wake up, make tea, practice 5 sentences, read while waiting for laundry, speak English while walking alone. She didn't need new time. She just anchored English to time she already had. That's what young learners often miss. Discipline isn't about pressure. It's about placement. She built fluency into the structure of her life. Another thing changed. She stopped trying to learn everything. At first, she wanted to master every tense, every rule, every accent. But then she realized wisdom is about filtering. She began asking, which phrases will actually change my daily life? She chose 10 per week. Repeated them, used them, lived them. How much does it cost? Can you help me? I'd love to, but I'm busy. These weren't textbook lines. They were survival tools. Want to try it? This week, write down the 10 most useful English phrases for your life. Not for the exam, for your reality. Tape them to your mirror, say them during breakfast, use them in voice messages. When you repeat what matters, your brain keeps it. And when you ignore what doesn't, your brain thanks you. That's mature fluency, not learning more, but learning smarter. She also noticed something no one warned her about. Her progress felt slow, but it stayed. She would forget less, hesitate less, repeat more with clarity. While others burned out from sprinting, she kept walking. Day by day, step by step. Progress that lasts is not always fast. It's intentional, it's internal. And sometimes the best evidence of growth is how calmly you can explain something you used to fear. Most learners obsess over daily performance, but she learned to track something more powerful, long-term consistency. Not, did I study perfectly today, but have I kept going this month? She began marking an X on her calendar for each day she practiced English, even if just for 5 minutes. That calendar became proof, not of perfection, but of commitment, and that commitment became identity. Now when she speaks, she doesn't speak fast. She speaks with weight, with presence, with memory, with purpose, and that presence is worth more than speed, because when you no longer rush, you begin to notice something even deeper. This journey was never about being fast. It was about becoming someone who doesn't quit. And once you become that person, something else unlocks inside you, something final and irreversible. One night, while brushing her teeth, she looked into the mirror and asked herself, where was this courage earlier? And the answer came so softly it almost hurt. It wasn't missing. You just didn't need it yet. We don't become brave out of nowhere. We become brave when the silence starts to feel heavier than the fear. Learning English now, at this age, wasn't a delay. It was a decision to finally choose herself. Of course, the fear still whispered, what if I fail? And this time she answered out loud in English, then I adapt. Because that's what adults do. They don't collapse, they rebuild. They've survived grief, job loss, heartbreak, aging parents, sleepless nights, mispronouncing a word on a Zoom call. That's nothing in comparison. Every mistake is a message. I'm learning in real time, and that is something to be proud of. But then came another voice, quieter, more dangerous. What if I succeed? That question hit deeper than fear, because success meant change. It meant traveling again, applying for that job, making friends in other countries, stepping into rooms she used to avoid, speaking up, and realizing that maybe, just maybe, the life she dreamed about wasn't gone. It was waiting for her to speak it into existence. So she sat down and wrote 3 English sentences about her future. I want to teach women like me. I want to travel to London alone. I want to speak with my grandchildren without feeling ashamed. And in those sentences, she found something stronger than grammar. She found direction. She wasn't just learning English anymore. She was learning how to live again, this time on her own terms. The biggest shift happened silently. She no longer started things out of fear, not out of guilt, not because she felt behind. She started because she had a purpose. And that purpose wasn't external, it was internal. For the first time in decades, she didn't need to prove anything. She just needed to become everything she had postponed. English was no longer a skill, it was permission. Every day she whispered a new affirmation before studying, not because it was trendy, but because she needed to hear it from herself. I'm not late, I'm ready. 5 words, but every time she spoke them, something inside her healed. Because learning English at 60 is not a delay. It's a declaration, a message to life. I'm not done yet. Try this now. Speak to the mirror, quietly, just for you. Say, I'm not late. I'm ready. Feel the truth inside it. Not because it's easy, not because you're confident, but because you've decided to begin anyway. That decision alone makes you powerful. And in that moment, something shifts forever. Because once you realize you are not late, you stop begging for time and start owning your timeline. And from that point forward, English becomes something entirely different. Not a subject, not a task, but a door. And the key has been in your hand this whole time. So now the question isn't, am I too late? The real question is, am I ready to stop hiding behind that belief? Because after everything you've lived, after everything you've survived, you're not starting from zero. You're starting with experience, resilience, and a fire that youth can't manufacture. Let me ask you something. What if learning English isn't about grammar, but about finally choosing yourself? What would your life look like if you gave yourself permission to grow again? Not in secret, not in shame, but in full view? If this story touched you, if it made you reflect, then it means there's something inside you that's ready to begin, ready to rebuild, ready to speak, even slowly, even imperfectly, with purpose. So now I invite you to do 3 things. Subscribe to this channel, because we don't just teach English here. We build new identities through language. Like this video, not for me, but to remind yourself that this moment mattered. Leave a comment. Tell me your age, your dream, your reason. Your story might be the light someone else needs. And if you never want to miss a video that speaks to your heart while teaching your mind, make sure to activate the notifications, because this is not just an English journey, it's a return to the version of you that's been quietly waiting to be heard.